You are about to journey against the current of contemporary thought and beyond the troubled waters of daily news to the very source of our extraordinary culture. You are going upstream with Cashel and Edge.
Mr. Loy Edge, how we doing this fine
Jack.
day?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
Not too bad. You know, just before we came on the air, we were talking about, I was having trouble adjusting the seat, and you were talking about the absence of Sears catalogs and phone books to...
That's what we always used, man. That was our go-to Apple box
right,
back in the day.
The equalizer, right?
And they were always handy.
They were.
You know, well, I don't think they need the Sears catalog. Well, get the Monkey Ward catalog. It's a little smaller.
You know, and those were the internet of the day when they came out. They threatened the local businesses, and there was some real panic in small town America. They thought that literally, I've seen ads of you see tumbleweeds going down the street, circa 1920, 10, whatever.
Oh, because those catalogs are going to steal everything.
That's right.
Yeah.
Plus, the catalogs had the added advantage of being useful in the outhouse, where they were eventually relegated. Well, what that triggered in me was, we're going to digress before we even get to our topic. In the year 2000, bizarrely, I moderated a Republican debate for presidential debate.
You did?
Yeah, in Kansas City here.
I didn't remember any of that going on.
And I
might have even watched if I knew had I known that.
It was live. I don't know that it was broadcast. Because
I was in L.A.
The two top candidates that year, John McCain and George Bush, passed on the debate. So I had all the leftover guys.
Really?
I had Alan Keyes, Pat Buchanan, and Steve Forbes.
Oh, yeah, I remember Steve.
But the intriguing part of it was my introduction. So I had to introduce the candidates, and basically they didn't debate. They just made a pitch.
Okay.
So my instructions, though, for Gary Bauer, who was sort of a Christian kind of populist kind of guy.
I don't remember him at all.
No, he was pretty forgettable, but he was on the stage, and he was a real elfin kind of guy. I mean, he was not only short, but he was like, he could play one of the dwarves in Snow White. He just like little teeny hands, little teeny head. He felt like he was like from another planet almost, you know? But the equalizer in this case, short of a phone book, is on the podium in front of which, behind which he was going to speak, there was a little footstool at the bottom. And I was to, with my foot, when he came on, to pull out the footstool so he could just walk up and step on it and everything would seem natural, okay? Mm-hmm. So I introduce him, and then I go to pull out the little footstool, and it won't come out, right? So I had to get down to my hands and knees and pull out the footstool, which kind of blew the whole cover.
Yeah.
Not only is it the indignity or the handicap of being short in a presidential race, never a good thing, but the indignity of being caught trying to boost your height, you know. So I was never again asked to moderate.
Well, you ruined his political career.
He'd be president today. He's probably still, 6 terms in, the new FDR. But, you and I, probably the audience doesn't know this yet, the word may have been spread. I'd been checking page 6 of the New York Post, did not see it anywhere.
What's that?
Our first date.
Oh, that was wonderful.
We started at the movies,
Yeah.
We didn't even sit in the balcony. They don't even have balconies anymore to sit in,
No.
No.
And you wouldn't get me a Coke because they were too expensive.
But we behaved ourselves.
Yeah.
Actually, Loy and I went to see the other night the Kansas City premiere of the movie, the Dinesh D'Souza movie, Police State, which set up our theme for today, the nature of is there a police state and what form does it take? And what did you think of the movie, by the way? We didn't get a chance to talk about it.
Well, full disclosure, I had a very good friend in that film.
That's right.
Nick Searcy.
Yeah.
And they used him as it was kind of a clever device. But if you've seen Dinesh's films before,
right,
he covers a lot of territory. He puts a lot of facts in there. Unfortunately, for people like you and for we're kind of into that stuff, so
right,
there's not a lot of new material for us.
Right.
and you get the same feeling after you see every Dinesh film, which is, thank God they made it.
Yeah.
That really needed to be done.
Right.
I hope to God people see this so that
Right.
they understand what's going on. Well, how did you like it? Well, there wasn't really anything new in there for me. But what the weak part of Dinesh's films has been up until now was the reenactment part, because he has so many facts in there. He has to weave it together with a little reenactment. Well, he and his wife aren't the greatest, actors.
Right. Or directors.
Or directors, and
Right.
they try to get through this thing. Well, this time they used Nick as sort of a vehicle. He
Right.
represented the FBI.
Right.
And he was the
Heavy.
he was the heavy that kept it moving.
Right.
And I thought that was effective. It's always good to see Nick because he's great. I don't know where he picked up the ability to play such evil, bad bastards
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
Must have been hanging out with some really bad people. That's all I can say.
Yeah. I believe he played the the defense attorney in the movie Gosnell, if I remember right.
Yeah, he loves playing he loves being the heel.
He was the director of that, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he?
He was the director, but he also in wrestling circles, you know what a heel is.
Yeah.
The heel's the one that everybody boos.
Right. Sure. Right.
That's Nick's ultimate fan. In fact, he's done it. He did it recently, just a few years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was a manager for some bad guy wrestler, and he was the Andy Kaufman telling everybody, "I'm from Hollywood,"
In real life or in a movie?
In real life.
In real life. Wow.
So he loves this stuff. But anyway, I thought it was again, like all Dinesh, well crafted. It was a important film, but again, it's a little hard for me to.
Yeah, I felt like you did. There was only one person in there that I was not aware of, and that was the Italian guy in New York, who was the neighbors busted, and it was at January 6th.
Oh yeah,
He was just wandering around. Never went into the building, as far as I know.
The little old guy.
Yeah, right.
Oh yeah.
And they had a stroke, and they ruined his life.
Yeah.
And they ruined the lives of thousands, maybe literally thousands of people.
I really think people should see that if they have an opportunity.
Right, I think so.
And that
too.
was a premiere that went all over the nation.
All over the nation.
They
right.
just bought out a bunch of theaters,
Right,
which is
right.
what they have to do to get a film like that out to the public, because nobody will touch it.
But I started thinking about it in light of recent developments, especially both locally and nationally, that police state isn't exactly the right term for what's going on.
Okay.
Because the war is not only on citizens, the war is on police as well.
Yes.
And I started thinking about what would be a better term for what we're seeing taking place in America today. And the term I came up with, partly because it's alliterative, is Jacobin justice, where the Jacobins were the sort of the political class in revolutionary France who thought they could control the mob, and for several years did. And in the meantime, they were wreaking havoc on the people, on these landed classes, the gentry, the bourgeois, the clergy, everyone but themselves. But the sort of a leftist political class and the mobs they controlled. It was essential they controlled that mob. And they left, executions all over the place, incredible violence, innocent people being executed, getting their heads chopped off. Finally, at the end of the day, the Jacobins get their heads, Robespierre gets his head chopped off. So it happens. They eat their own. This is classic revolution.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a couple cases in the news that seem to me be part of that same process. And the one that I've been following nationally that I think deserves attention, it's getting it now, finally, because Tucker Carlson talked about it, Matthew Walsh talked about it, and that is the case of Derek Chauvin and his three colleagues in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
Chauvin is now serving something like 23 years. The other three guys got like 3 years, 4 years. And the revelation that came up recently, and it's so classic, an assistant prosecutor in the Hennepin County District Attorney's Office, actually they call it, they don't call it, it's his county attorney is what they call it. She's an assistant county attorney. her name is Sweezy, Amy Sweezy. She files a sexual harassment suit against her boss. This is, his name's irrelevant. His name's Freeman, but it's not important to the story. In 2020, she was working when the George Floyd event took place. She was an assistant county attorney. He was the county attorney. And in the lawsuit, it just shows you how skewed their sense of justice is. She's like, it's like the whole Me Too movement, you know. She was sexually harassed, she claims, and she was suffered professionally because of it. She doesn't care that they're sending 4 innocent men to prison, right? She cares that she was sexually harassed. So in the depositions that just surfaced last week or so, a couple of weeks ago, she reveals that there's like a throwaway line for her, right? She is George Floyd dies on May 25th. I believe that was Memorial Day, the Monday. And on Tuesday morning, she calls the medical examiner for the county, Andrew Baker, Hennepin County, is Minneapolis' area. And she says to him, by the way, we want you to do the autopsy on George Floyd. By the end of that day, he knew what the winds were in the air. And he calls her back. He goes, there's no strangulation. There's no asphyxiation. And then he worries out loud. He says, he goes, I'm concerned about what happens when I produce results that don't jibe with the narrative that's already out there, right? Mm-hmm. They knew this on day one. They knew this within 24 hours of Floyd's death, that he hadn't been strangled. He hadn't been asphyxiated, right?
This is something everybody's got to really take to heart, because it's not unusual, unfortunately, for people to be so callous about sending people to prison and ruining their lives that they don't even have an inkling of remorse. There's not even hesitation or doubt. That tells you that we're really dealing with psychopathic people.
Right at the top.
They have no concern at the top and all the way down, because anybody who sees that happen, that should be a visceral. You should immediately, if you have any grace whatsoever in your soul, what could be more of a litmus test than sending an innocent person to
prison, right?
To prison.
Yeah. But what you see at work there is that whole Jacobin process. So when we say police state, we forget about the police on the ground. You have the bourgeois elected elites controlling that office. You have them working with and in fear of the mob, because the mob justice was running rampant by day one, and certainly in Minneapolis and nationwide. In fact, I remember talking to you that next day when we were having coffee or whatever. That was, within a day or two later, and he said,
we had a date before?
Yes, we did. But there were other people there. It wasn't,
okay.
It wasn't a private thing.
All right.
It's kind of in public, but that this was going to be real bad.
Yeah.
And we underestimated how bad it was going to be, because not only did it end up sending 4 innocent men to prison and burning down $2 billion worth of property, peacefully, largely peaceful, but it galvanized the whole woke revolution. Everyone got out of the way of it. Every institution, we talked about that in the last week's show, how all the institutions yielded to this mob fury.
Yes.
But this story is even worse. Let me just add some detail here to the Chauvin case. So the Andrew Baker comes back on the 29th again. He sticks to his guns. He said no asphyxiation, no strangulation. Chauvin's knee wasn't on his neck. It was on the back of his shoulders. Standard police procedure. I saw it done on the streets of Kansas City 2 weeks before on a woman.
And not a tough thing for someone doing an autopsy to tell.
No, right.
That there are crushed capillaries and smashed. I mean, it's not real
routine.
Tricky.
Right. It wasn't even, it was not, right. A rookie could have come to the same conclusion. So he does that on the 29th. Then it gets really sinister. The D.C. medical examiner, who's a black activist named Roger Mitchell, he's also the deputy mayor of Washington, D.C., and tied in with the Obamas and all those people. He contacts Andrew Baker in Minneapolis and says to him, hey, he sees the preliminary findings. He goes, if this doesn't jibe he goes, I don't like this, basically, he says. And he says, I'm going to write an op-ed to the Washington Post criticizing your findings, right? And he gives Baker all weekend to think about it. And finally, Baker relents. And so what Mitchell tells Baker is, you better put neck compression into that diagnosis, right? So when it comes back finally, okay, no asphyxiation, strangulation, but neck compression. That's all they needed to change. Because for murder, you have to prove, A, that what Chauvin did, he recklessly endangered him in violation of procedure, which he didn't do, and also that the action he took resulted in Floyd's death, which it didn't, right? And so from then on, it was written in stone. Even people on our side, I was appalled watching that happen. Because I had watched all the videos, I had watched all the, the body cam footage. We all know what happened. No, we'd all know. Those of us who chose to know knew. Everyone else was like, it was sacred ground. It was written in stone. You couldn't talk about it, and they had their way.
Do you remember, I'm sure you do, this goes back to the 60s, 50s probably, the campaign that was pretty widespread with stickers and everything about support your local police.
Sure, right.
Pigs is beautiful. They had other little different stickers and things, but generally it was a message that the local police need support. Do you know where that came from?
No.
That was the John Birch Society. Because they knew that this was happening. That they knew that there would be campaigns by these Jacobin, Fabian, whatever you want to call these,
right,
these international globalists, moral relativists, secular humanists, eugenicists were going to attack local police because that was one of the protections that we have to keep everyone from going insane.
Right.
I mean, your local cop's going to go, well, that's crazy. That don't make no sense.
Right.
I ain't going to arrest nobody for that.
Yeah.
It's almost, you can hear almost Andy Griffith going, well, I don't know why you all city folks are getting so upset about somebody like, Crazy Vern throwing rocks over here. He's been doing that for 50 years. Okay, well, this...
Right. Otis, get in and check yourself in.
Go check yourself in. They don't like that.
Right.
They've had fantasies about a national police secret force,
right,
since day one. I mean, that's what they're after. And so this whole defund the police movement is exactly what the John Birch Society was saying is going to happen.
That's right, because in the federalist system, the one great resistance to federal power is not so much the local municipal police, because they're under, look what happened in Minneapolis. We have a black activist attorney general who lost his bid to become Democratic National Committee chair because of his allegiance, his affiliation with the Nation of Islam, right? That's where that's coming from. He leaned all over the Minneapolis, the Hennepin County prosecutors. It was attorney general. They basically took over the case. And you have a totally woke mayor. Mm-hmm. It's a totally liberal city, right?
Right.
And so even if Derek Chauvin was guilty of everything he was accused of, what was that indicative of? Nothing. So, but there's not much local police can do. Most of them voted for Trump, but that's not much more they could do than that. They can't be too political. But it's the county sheriffs.
County sheriffs. They're
those
the ones
are
with
the bulwark.
Autonomy and to be able to protect the citizenry.
And the left knows that.
Yeah.
In fact, I was talking to a fellow who is my deep state's the wrong word. intel national security guy who knows a lot, serious guy, serious player. And he says that's where the resistance is going to come. He said we're already in World War III.
Yes, we are.
He said it's been going on for 3 or 4 years internally. Yeah. He said the resistance will come from the county sheriffs, from the states, the red states and the county sheriffs. It won't come from top down. It might, but that would take a major overhaul. Yeah.
Strangely enough, one of the big moves to not counteract that, but to, what's the word? Kind of freeze them out of to decrease their power
of the sheriffs
of the sheriffs.
Yeah.
Was the 17th Amendment, which was taking the senatorial from being a state-controlled,
right,
state-appointed Senate to turning it into a political football,
right,
and every issue into a political football.
Yeah.
They politicized nationally the senatorial contests,
right,
so that they could take away another local issue where there was state and county control and argument.
Right.
You know, the debate was within states about issues.
Right.
They purposefully moved this onto a federal platform so that they could decrease the influence of the state governments and the county governments.
They could also buy seats.
Yes.
In, like, say, a red state that otherwise the legislator would choose.
Yes.
And there was no way to control all those little state rep elections in any effective way. But a Senate election, just pour tons of money in.
So I contend that whole then that was an evil, wicked amendment, and
right,
that went in when all that other crap went in.
And that's why the federal system's been such a bulwark against encroaching Marxism.
Mm-hmm.
There's another local case that falls into this category that I've been following. It's really shocking, but it's the same pattern. You have the Jacobins and the running the in Jackson County, Missouri, where we are, which in fact is where the Second Coming will be, I believe, according to the Book of Mormon.
I think Independence.
Yeah, right, Independence. Right.
I've been hanging out there waiting.
waiting for the.
So far, all I've gotten is hassled. I've gotten a few tickets.
Right. Well, that comes up in the song "Book of Mormons." You know.
Does it?
Yeah, and do you know the music for that at all? But the punchline is Jackson County, Missouri. You know, where the the Garden of Eden, according to at least the musical, the Book of Mormon, was in Jackson County, Missouri, which is where the Kansas City, Missouri, is located. It's odd you can make a movie, a play called The Book of Mormon, and being a big, wild success on Broadway. I know that Hillary went to one of the early shows and was seen giving it a standing ovation, right? And yet, can you imagine the reception that would get for, let's say, The Book of Muhammad, right?
Oh, yeah, you can't make fun of.
Which is another issue floating around the world today that we'll have to deal with. But in Kansas City, Missouri, which is in Jackson County, the Jackson County courthouse controlled by the Jacobins. They have a not Soros-funded, unlike St. Louis on the other side of the state, but might as well be, Gene Peters Baker, the county
Mean
prosecutor.
Gene?
Yeah, Mean Gene, yeah. Mean Gene if you're a cop, Mean Gene. And the case is pretty astonishing. And it was in the news this past week because the Court of Appeals turned down this guy's plea. His name's Eric DeValkenaere. And this takes place in 2019. I started reading the details of the case, and they are, it leaves me scratching my head. I just don't know how this could happen, except that the police state is warring on local police. Eric DeValkenaere, a 20-something year veteran, perfect record, no history of anything bad. Unlike they whisper about Derek Chauvin, well, he's really a bad guy. They don't know why he's a bad guy. They just say that.
Has a truck.
Right. Yeah, right. Probably a Trump bunk sticker on it someplace. But DeValkenaere doesn't even have that to be whispered about. Family man, good father. His father was a master detective in Kansas City. And Albert DeValkenaere. Here's what happens. Here's the case. And I read, what made it this interesting is where federalism comes into play. because the state of Missouri is a red state, even if Jackson County is a blue county. And the attorney general made an appeal to the courts, and he made an appeal to the governor to override this conviction because it's so bad. And he wrote out the details of what happened. Okay, we start with Cameron Lamb. Now, what's odd about this Lamb, had you ever read Bonfire of the Vanities?
I tried to.
Yeah.
I got part of the way through it.
The movie's terrible, but the book is brilliant. It's Tom Wolfe, my favorite author. But the black victim in it is named Lamb, right? And the Al Sharpton figures, the Reverend Bacon. It's like it was all life imitating art because the book preceded this whole pattern played out. You know, you create a firestorm around some innocent black victim, and well, in this case, yeah, in real life, the victims are never quite that innocent. Cameron Lamb starts his day by beating up his girlfriend. They get into a fight. He throws her stuff out of the house. She's afraid of. They get into a fight outside. She takes off in her Mustang. He starts chasing her through the streets.
This is why you don't have a lot of high sugar stuff for breakfast.
That's exactly right. That was the whole point of this show, by the way. Mm-hmm. That's where I was leading with this.
Okay.
Thanks for anticipating that.
Okay, good.
You always jump ahead. You know,
yeah.
you have a way of seeing the big picture.
That's right.
Before I get there.
Okay, sorry.
Right. No more sugar for breakfast. Anyhow, he's driving through streets, 35-mile-an-hour streets at 60 to 90 miles an hour. A cop sees him go by. He calls the helicopter cop, right? Because they're not allowed to chase if you're in an unmarked car.
Right.
So the helicopter guy follows them, and then these two other cops are alerted to it because he comes by them. He leaves the chase. Lamb stops chasing the girl, but he comes back to his own house going 60 miles an hour. And so they see this, and the helicopter guy is still following it. He alerts DeValkenaere and this other guy, Schwamm, that, you know, this guy is bad news. There must be something serious that he's fleeing from. So they go. They don't chase him, but they get the instructions from the helicopter cop to go to a certain house. He says he's parking in the back, hiding under some trees, etc. So Schwamm takes the lead. He walks up the back driveway. DeValkenaere is on the other side. Schwamm goes up first. DeValkenaere is on the far side, away from the action. And so Schwamm comes around. He sees Lamb trying to back his truck into an underground garage, which we have a lot of in Kansas City.
Pain in the ass those things are.
Except it's too big, and he can't get it in.
Yeah, that's typical. They suck.
He's trying to hide it. He usually parks on the street. We know that. But now he's obviously trying to hide. And so Schwamm comes around and says, you know, he has a gun at low, you know, what do they call it, low hold or whatever. And he says, okay, stop, you know, we got to talk to you. And so Schwamm is looking straight down the ramp at the car, doesn't have as good a view as DeValkenaere, who comes over the other side. DeValkenaere sees Lamb take a gun and put it in between his legs. And he doesn't do anything yet. He doesn't shoot yet. But he's saying, stop, stop. Drop the gun. And then he sees him raise the gun to the window, the driver's side. And then he feels obliged to shoot him to protect his partner. Schwamm doesn't see the gun. But 4 officers arrive on the scene, tactical officers, and they see the gun lying under his left hand, hanging out the window, right? He shoots and kills him, DeValkenaere does. And then the prosecutors, the Jacobins, make the case that one of those cops, they don't say who, must have planted that gun.
Of
right?
course.
Because Lamb would never have a gun, right?
Despite those cops had nothing else to do. They were looking to ruin their lives with some kind of a trick.
And then the question is, the father, Albert DeValkenaere, writes a letter, says, okay, here's what we know about, here's what reasons Lamb might have had to be running from the police. Well, he beat up his girlfriend that morning. He was driving a stolen vehicle. He had a stolen handgun. He was high at the time, and he had illegal drugs on his possession. Otherwise...
And Frosted Flakes.
Those Frosted Flakes is what set it all off, right? I do not put sugar on my cereal in the morning, right? Honey roasted oats every morning. No, you don't need it. No, you don't need it. There's enough built-in sugar into your...
Yes.
But that's where it all leads. So it happens. This is Jackson County, and DeValkenaere figures I can't get a fair trial, and it's like getting a fair trial in District of Columbia.
Yeah.
So he goes, it's a bench trial. He goes before the judge, but the judge is, he hears the mob outside. He's hearing these voices, and I don't know that he did this intentionally or not, but I don't know. In other words, I don't know whether he just did it out of fear or did it out of malice, or maybe he thought he was doing the right thing by giving DeValkenaere 6 years in prison. And that's where that stands today. I think
he's a political prisoner.
Yeah,
We have many political prisoners.
Just like the guys in the, I was going to look up the Jacobin. When the French Revolution, they named their months.
Yeah,
they gave each name new months.
New months.
I have to look up.
They did the Brasilia thing.
Right.
Starting all fresh.
You keep talking, because I'm going to tell you why I'm going to look up the revolutionary name for the month of January.
Oh, yeah?
You know why?
No.
Why I'm not going to use the word January in our ensuing discussion?
Oh, yes. Okay. Of course. Yeah, you got to use an alternative
You
word.
keep talking. I'm gonna have to look this up very quickly here.
You keep talking. Okay.
I will be listening to you while I look here. We're looking up the if too bad we don't have callers because they could do it for us, but
well, the thing that watching that movie, one of the things that I realized was the FBI is supposed to be an investigatory.
That's correct.
Branch.
Right. They didn't even carry guns.
They don't carry
until the mid-30s.
But as this film indicate, and I'm sure it's one thing about Dinesh D'Souza, he's accurate in his portrayals.
Yes, right.
He is a great researcher.
Right.
And he's an honest broker for all this stuff. And you just look at the FBI and what it's come to, and there's no investigation whatsoever that occurs in that organization. In fact, they've decreased the investigatory, whatever it is. They've cut that down, and now I don't know if anybody's investigating a lot of this, these threats that we have.
Right, because they've changed their focus, and that was part of the
threats.
movie. Right. Okay, let's see, September. Let's see, where's January?
And people wonder, these political prisoners that they're holding right now. I mean, two things that I think about. We've got political prisoners out the wazoo right now.
We do.
And we also
right.
have hostages right now, American hostages. I mean, you remember the Carter administration when they had hostages? Day 27, here's the scorecard. We've been up here 27 days and blah, 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 and all this stuff. It's like, okay, how many hostages are they holding that are American right now? Who has them? What kind of danger are they in? How long have they been held? What are they doing to get them back?
Right. We don't want to know about that.
It's not. It's la 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 la.
Right. And part of the reason is, and we've seen this flare up in the last few weeks, obviously, is that part of the Jacobin mob, on the coexist bumper stickers.
Yeah.
They created those coexist bumper stickers to make it seem somehow that natural that Islam should be in there with gay rights. And whatnot.
Yeah.
So now we're seeing the mobilization of the pro-Palestinian mobs, which are hardly distinguishable from the BLM mobs or the Antifa mobs. They're co-opting the Arab street into their coalition now.
Moral relativism.
Right.
It's all part of the complexity industry. Throw it all on the wall, confuse everybody. They changed from you remember when they had the little stickers or the metal things where they took the Christian fish and they put Darwin in it and put little feet on it.
Right.
Those were too mean.
Yeah.
They went with the coexist as that's their idea of an enlightened viewpoint.
Right.
Put them all in there. So you're really equally making fun of all of the religions.
Right.
But it'll appear that you're promoting them all.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's moral relativism, which is necessary for these atheistic for this zero-sum approach that they take. You can't have religious belief.
No, I mean, religion is an obstacle. I should say that is typically Christianity, Judeo-Christianity, is an obstacle to mob rule.
Mm-hmm.
And it always, it's not to say that Christians have historically behaved well. They haven't, but
it's ideals that we're talking about.
That's right. And
it's
there was
not
always
the reality on the ground. It's
at the end of the
ideals.
day, some tribunal that said, "Hey, you're misbehaving."
Mm-hmm.
Someone would come in and say and judge you. So, for instance, America, when it went into Iraq in 2006, when we had Abu Ghraib, the prison scandal, we had a reserve unit from friggin' West Virginia, right? Have these guys pose in their underwear or whatever. And it was an international scandal.
That's right.
And it was like a horrible thing. I mean, no bad thing could you say about the United States that would go unchallenged. And yet now, right, we're, not we, you and I aren't, our friends on the left are being asked to overlook, beheadings, burning of children alive. And then they'll quibble. Well, 40 children weren't beheaded. Stop. How many does it take? 1, 2, 3, And then you saw this, the Israelis put together a highlight reel taken from Hamas video body cameras and communications showing what they had done. It was horrible. And yet you're asked to overlook that because to make Jacobin justice work, you've got to have the mob on your side.
That's right.
And
so that's why you always hear about things, usually coming from the leftists. It's always poking the eyes out of children.
Right.
Or, strangling dachshund puppies or something.
Right.
You hear this stuff right out of the chute
right.
when they're ginning up the war,
right.
whatever the war is.
Yeah.
Well, this time they kind of got caught in one of those things because they were the perpetrators of the horrid.
Right.
And
the violence was so horrible and so overt that it was hard for them to completely suppress. So what they try to do is get back to your moral relativism argument, is have Israel bomb hospitals.
That's
the next
right.
day, right?
Innocent people, 500 people died.
Right.
They're dead.
From a misfired...
Children, crippled children, 500 of them murdered and blown up to bits in a hospital and it's like, I don't buy... You got to stop listening to this stuff the first few days.
Right, absolutely.
And then that's what I got so pissed about Lindsey Goober Graham coming out.
Right.
Because he's always there to say something absolutely over the top.
Right.
Before the dust even settles.
Right.
He's out there, it's like, God, they need to primary that guy and get him out of there.
Yeah. And, and yet our media, which are quick to denounce us for disinformation, the New York Times, Israeli jets kill 500 in a hospital attack, right? Palestinians say, well, first of all, if Palestinians are saying it, forget about it. It's almost assuredly not true. That's not to say everything Israel says is true, but at least they held themselves to a standard of truth, and they know they will be held to a standard. But
to refer to Palestinians
right.
as some sort of a credible thing, it's like you got to screw it down a little bit tighter than that.
Right.
That's like sources say.
Yeah.
Experts say.
Hamas says.
Come on, we got to quit taking that crap.
Yeah.
Look at these stories and consider the source. If they don't give a precise source, assume it is what it is, toilet paper.
And that's why this all flows together. This is the whole intersectional alliance coming into force here. And you realize now, not so much in the United States, but in Europe, where the real danger lies. You have this huge inflamed population, and you have the fellow travelers, from the left and from other disaffected groups. You've got a force that you're not going to be able to stop. So you see in London, for instance, 50,000 angry men in the streets of London.
Recent imports.
Yeah. Who stops that? Well, what the Jacobins do is they'll try to co-opt it. They think they're ahead of that. They think they're managing that crowd until they wake up one morning.
And they're on a spit, roasting.
That's it, exactly. Then their head is being chopped off.
Mm-hmm.
And then the neo-Jacobins, or the people who are the Girondists, or whoever's beyond the Jacobins, will be saying, well, let's see proof of that. Just because you say his head was knocked off, they're bad. And they're on the rampage right now.
Oh, yeah.
And what happened in Kansas City with the DeValkenaere case is that when the governor was thinking about pardoning DeValkenaere, Jean Peters Baker, our Jacobin prosecutor, said, well, I'm not sure I could control the outbreak if you do that. And she threatens him with her mobs, right? She thinks she has control over these mobs. For the minute, she may, but not for long. And I'm not sure I know where this heads, but we do know this, is that, as they say, truth is the first casualty of war. We get that. But now truth is the first casualty of these domestic wars.
Mm-hmm.
So now they know, now on the right at least, and the media have to know, that the process that imprisoned Chauvin and his 3 colleagues was rigged.
Yes.
What will they do? They'll ignore it as long as they can.
Mm-hmm.
And a local level, like the DeValkenaere case, they know they could suppress that because they're not going to talk about it. Because they have to protect their mob. They have to protect their mob. An interesting example that fits into that, and we've talked about this before, is the case of the 2 kids in Las Vegas who ran over the bicyclists and killed them. You remember this?
Where was this?
Las Vegas.
No.
What made it particularly egregious, this happened in mid-August, although the videos didn't surface until mid-September.
Of 2023?
Yeah.
Okay.
2 kids.
Oh, yeah, I do remember this. This is a road rage thing.
Oh, no, it wasn't even rage. It was just calculated thrill kill, like Leopold and Loeb on a stolen car.
Okay.
They just ran into this guy on a bicycle at high speed, who was a retired police officer, and killed him.
Okay. Yeah, this is...
Now, what happened was that the video that they took finally surfaced, and it became so outrageous that it attracted huge internet attention on the right, because what we knew from watching the video is that the cameraman was black, the guy taking the video. The driver, we did not know. It was harder to tell. In fact, I wrote a piece earlier cautioning. I said, I don't think he's black. It turns out he's Hispanic. And the 2 I just saw a video of them in court just laughing the other day, right? Just making faces at the kids, the children of the killed police officer. And it's a huge story in Las Vegas. But it's proof that what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas if it doesn't fit the national narrative. The New York Times and the Washington Post didn't talk about it for days, weeks. Finally, they found an angle they could use to talk about it, and that is that Elon Musk posts the video, right? So they go after Elon Musk for the net result was, and this now seems quaint in retrospect, their angle they took was that it generated anti-Semitic comments made against the reporter in Las Vegas who was reporting on the story, right?
Okay.
That was the kind of anti-Semitism that set off the New York Times just a month ago. And now you can't even chop off a baby's head, and you're looking for some equivocation to explain it away. It's an astonishing world we live in.
Well,
people are actually very should be grateful to have this show to explain this all to them.
Exactly,
right.
Jack.
Just like I'm grateful to have you to explain it to me, to break down my Pollyannish resistance to the truth.
Well, it all comes down to how much sugar's in your breakfast cereal. But, as I've said, Jack, you've really got to pay attention if you're in one of the cities that has declared itself a sanctuary city.
Right.
That is in my opinion, that's the number one clue that you need to look at your situation.
Yeah.
And to know there ain't nobody here watching your back.
That's right. Even if the police wanted to.
Even if they want to, they are under assault.
Right. Right. Because they are victims of the same police state you're a victim of.
That's right.
And
so it's more important than ever to become acquainted with your local police and to, in any way possible, cooperate with them, even though it sounds like it may be futile at this point, because there's the Jacobins are so entrenched. But as I've said, the cities that are under this sort of control are in a de facto secession. They are seceding from the republic, and you are in occupied territory if you're in one of those cities. Don't kid yourself. If they're already into the nullification of saying, no federal government, we're above that.
right.
We're going to do things our way.
Our mob is protected.
Yeah,
They don't get investigated by the FBI.
that's right.
They don't go sent into the gulag for a year or 2 or 3, you know?
That's right. If you're in a country where there are political prisoners, where there are hostages that aren't being defended, where there are, because they're on the wrong side of the political spectrum,
Right.
you're in trouble. And I agree with your friend, we're a few years into this world war.
Yeah, and there are 2 ways we can win. One is we resist, and strongly enough, we wake people up on our side first. We're seeing some people in the middle get their eyes opened this last month or so. But the second one, and the way that these revolutions end often, is these intersectional alliances begin to butt heads at some point.
Oh, yeah.
And
That's
we're seeing
the problem when you're herding cats like that.
That's exactly right. And Obama's gift, to the degree he had one, was being a fellow traveler in each and every one of these movements, right?
Exactly.
Gays, well, hey, Muslims, Allah
My middle
Akbar,
name's Hussein.
right?
Well, he's the only Christian president with the middle name Hussein. I don't know where I heard that country song.
I missed that. That was a great one. Now, but the potential for headbutting is really strong, because, like we're seeing in Chicago, where the black people are saying, "Hey, you're taking away our gym to give it to some friggin' migrants."
That's
No,
right.
not on our turf,
That's right.
We'll see what happens first. In the meantime, though, I would say this is that if you have a gripe and you want to have a good place to air it, I'd come get yourself a podcast like we have here
That's right.
at Real Media in Overland Park. People here are great. They're very helpful. They've done a good job with us.
Oh, yeah, they're great people.
Trained us how to be, semi-civilized. We didn't mention a certain day and a certain month this time, so we should be safe to stay on the air,
Let me mention one thing, Jack,
Sure.
before we sign off.
Yeah.
I saw a YouTube-type video recently. Somebody sent it to me. Did you see the woman in the Wells Fargo bank branch who refused to put a mask on and was arguing with them?
Yes.
Did you see
Yes,
that?
I saw
and
that.
she stood her ground.
Right.
And these you see these poor bank tellers just looking absolutely pathetic and ridiculous with their masks on.
Right.
And they're standing there with their sad eyes like, can we just go on with our little banking world? And she's like, no, I'm not going to put one of those damn masks on. And by the way, I'm an attorney, and you can't do this, and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And the bank lady's out there doing the bank. Well, it is our policy.
Right.
You want to piss somebody off when you're having a deep argument. Say that's our policy, because that'll set me off.
And as she said, it's not the law. It's just
right.
the policy.
It's not
right?
the law.
Right.
And then they called the local police in.
Yeah.
And those poor cops are standing there with their
Right.
masks on. It's
Right.
like, lady, I can't. And she's like, take my money out. I mean, that was the absurd thing. Is
Right, right.
take the $200,000 I have in the bank out of your safe.
Right.
Take it out of the vault and give it to me then.
Yeah.
I'm out of here.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course, they're like, well, we don't do that. Can't do that.
Yeah, this
But-
is, what do you call it?
But when I saw that, I thought, this is how hard it's going to be, but we all have to do this. We all have to say no.
No mas. I think after COVID, we're going to find more and more people willing to do that. What I'm finding, just like I found when I started protesting COVID on day one, I got a lot of people saying, well, Jack, I'm not so sure. And when I started talking about Derek Chauvin, I got that, well, I'd stay away from that one, Jack. But people are beginning to wake up. And I think when we talk about the prisoners in the D.C. gulags as a result of what was it, February 6th day, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm off by a month. It's time to stand up and say, no more.
No more.
Never again. Hey, we'll be back. We'll be back next week. Never again is not for us, of course. We'll be back before you want us to be back. But in general speaking, hey, good show, Lloyd. Thanks for coming in, and
Thank you, Jack.
we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for everything here at Real Media.